I thank you very much for tuning into That Will Never Work podcast. You know, most people define success by what they accumulate. But our guest spent 40 years learning that the only thing worth accumulating is the truth about yourself. His story is one of moving his life from a dead-end mess to a place he could not have imagined in his wildest dreams, from a starting point of paralyzing fear, dishonesty, and despair to a life of presence, discipline, and faith. A lot of us want that. And what he built on the other side of that journey is not just a successful business or a retirement at the age of 48. Man, what does that sound like to a lot of you? But the kind of hard-won, completely unperformable commitment that most people spend their entire lives searching for and never find. Let's talk about it right after this.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work, an award-winning podcast where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
So I would read you his bio, but I'm going to summarize it like this. Raw, unfiltered, earned, battle-tested, direct, soulful, and deeply real. I want to welcome each and every one of you to our guest today, Daryl Dittmer. Thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Maurice. Appreciate you having me, man. It was too kind. The things that you said, too kind. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. But in this episode, I think people will understand where I'm coming from with this. Because, like I said, I did my research, and I don't know if anybody could come from more humbler background, to be honest. Because you've been through it, bro.
There's been some challenges, that's for sure, but I can't say anything other than at this point in my life, I am grateful for everything that has happened, because everything that has happened brought me where I am today. And that's, it's been a wonderful place for me and a wonderful ride.
And so with that being said, what do you think you had, what did you have to lose, or what did you have to face about yourself? And what did you have to stop fighting before this idea of becoming a success? It sounds simple, but it really is not. So what did you have to go through to get to that simple idea? That chuckle.
Oh man, the most difficult thing that I had to face was me. I had to face my shadows and the side of me that was a liar, a cheat, a thief, doing drugs, drinking, dealing drugs, crimes. Thank God they didn't have phones back in the day recording all the stuff that I did. But seriously, that was it. The answer is I had to face myself, and I had to face that I couldn't look people in the eye. I had to face that I couldn't hold a conversation. I had to face I was scared to death. I thought I was this tough dude, but when I looked at myself honestly, I had to face that I was just a scared little kid. And that's what was inside of me. I'm 6'6". I used to be a fairly big dude. Whatever, sports and athletics and muscles and all that kind of crap. That has nothing to do with facing me. Sometimes that's hiding from me.
Right.
Sometimes that's I'm going to build something to surround myself with that makes it look like I'm not scared. But I was scared. And so I had to face all of those things about me, and that's been a lifelong journey. I mean, seriously, lifelong.
So you talking about how big you are physically, and a lot of times that's intimidating enough, right? You think you could kind of bully people around to get you what you want and looking to do, all those type of things. But as you're stating, there was this little kid in you somewhere that was hiding behind that a little bit. It almost gives me Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner vibes, right? But if you think about it, though, that person, even though that person was hiding, that person still had some strength within them as well. So when you finally looked in the mirror and saw, you know what, I'm not this big old scary monster, how did you really feel in that moment? Because a lot of times we don't like looking in that mirror to really see that reflection. It's like, you know what, yeah, I might be a little afraid, but I'm a little stronger than what I thought I was.
Yeah, and one of the things that I try to impart to people today, and especially younger people that are just trying to find their way, is you have everything in you that you need. Mm-hmm. And I 100% believe that. And my mom, who had she's been gone. I was just saying to my wife this morning, my mom's been gone for 25 years. And so, Mother's Day just happening and that right. sort of thing. And she came from a very dysfunctional family, a very dysfunctional situation. And, some of that was sort of passed into our family, right? Mm-hmm. And the kids and everybody got a little piece of that, which is fine. It's just everybody's doing what they can with their journey. Mm-hmm. And I believe that. So there's no blame and no excuses or anything like that. But she said to me as she was getting older and I was getting older, and this is what I believe everybody has, she said, you know what you don't have, you don't need. And I truly believe that for people. And it's just a matter of, instead of reaching outside of myself to try to find the validation from the world and everybody right. to agree with me or think I'm cool or think I'm great or whatever it is, I need to look inside of me. I need to turn mm-hmm. that gaze around and face inside of me. And in a lot of ways, inside of me is where all the bullies are. Mm-hmm. Inside of me is where my bullies are, because they want me to hide. They want me to not look in the mirror and mm-hmm. feel inadequate, or they want me to feel inadequate right. and insecure and all those things, and then run to something else to feel good. They don't want to get faced, because as soon as I face those bullies inside of me, they start to shrink and they start to go away. Mm-hmm. And then that bigger dude that is me, mm-hmm. not the physical Daryl that's a right. big dude, but the emotional and mentally strong Daryl starts to come out, and my inside start to match my outside.
So, excuse me, there's something I want to backtrack just a little bit of something that you mentioned as you were speaking about your mom during that moment. There were two words that you used, and I think a lot of times we hide behind this, because you said no blame, right? But a lot of times we blame someone else because of we are or are not something. So how were you able to work through not blaming someone else and taking more responsibility and accountability for yourself? Because if your mom didn't have it, you know what, Mom, you did this to me. Like, we hear that a lot. So how were you not able to, how did you work through that process of not, you know what, Mom, you did the best you could. Let's work this thing out. Let's get to another place. So how did you work through something like that?
I found mentors in my life, and I found one mentor in particular that really helped me. And I'm a big fan of planting seeds. I love mm-hmm. to plant seeds for people, and just, you know what, here's something you can think about, ruminate about. And that was done to me when I was younger. And one of the things my mentor said to me, which was absolutely crucial and started to turn me into a person that started looking at himself. And this was, mm-hmm. I was 19 years old when I was, put into drug treatment, all that sort of stuff, and came out and grabbed a mentor. I was like, dude, you got to help me, because I don't know what's going on. And he did. And he said to me, because he watched me fight, I grew up fighting. I grew up fighting life. I grew up fighting humans. I grew up fighting my insides. I fought everything. And we try so hard to fight problems. And sometimes, we have to stop that fight. And so my mentor said to me, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. And I was like, oh, so that means, because blaming is fighting,
right?
Excuses are fighting, as opposed to just allowing life. And the thing that I really want to impart to people is that life is going to hand us what it hands us.
Right.
There's going to be difficulty. There's going to be losses. As you get older, people go away, people die, you lose friends. Tough stuff happens. And that's just the way that life unfolds. So what I'm left with is I can either say, you know what, life's given me this. I'm giving up. I'm done. I'm not going to try. It's too hard. And that's the blaming side. Or, you know what, life's going to give me what it gives me. And my responsibility, you mentioned that word, which is one of my favorite words, taking responsibility for, not for what happens, because I don't have any control over that, but my responses to what happens and how I show up in the world every day. That's my responsibility. And probably the most important piece of that responsibility is not saying, I'm this way because of.
So we're going to touch a little bit about your background, because I think it's key, because we're talking about growth, right? You were in the farming business, right?
Did some of that.
But I'm bringing this idea up because not too long ago I watched this movie called The Pianist. I think it's called The Pianist. And in that movie, this gentleman, he's referring to his father, teaching him the difference between dirt and soil. What has nutrients, what doesn't have nutrients, what is dry, what has other types of, moisture, whatever it might have in it. And so I'm saying that because sometimes we don't understand the difference. And just based off of your own background, being a farmer, I'm just using this as an idea. How has that allowed you to say, you know what, Daryl, it's time to grow in this direction versus that direction, or whatever it might be? How had that experience influenced you?
What that brought to mind for me, Maurice, was you lay down with dogs long enough, you're going to get fleas.
You're right.
And I think that's, it's where am I planting myself? And like you said, I grew up, working on farms as a kid. And it's a funny little story. My dad, I was either 13 or 14. And after church one day, he put me in front of this farmer. He didn't ask me my permission or say, how does this make you feel? He said, put me in front of this farmer. He said, can you put him to work? And the farmer's like, yeah, I can put him to work. And so, I went to work working on farms, and I was making like $1.25, $1.50 an hour, something like that. But I was working long days. So I was like, man, the more I work, the more money I make, which was great. So anyway, that was a little side story, but how do I plant myself, and where am I planting myself, and who am I surrounding myself with? That's the soil, right? And what am I proactively learning? Am I proactively learning things that are going to help propel my life forward? Or am I scrolling on social media all day and just mindlessly letting this stuff infect my mind?
Right.
And hey, I'm on social media, but there are, I guess, limits or a balance that we need to achieve in our lives. And for me, and for a long time, and I think this is crucial, especially for people who are looking to become entrepreneurial or change their life in a different direction in that way, you have to spend your time on what's going to get you there. And whether that's reading books or, whatever, watching instructional videos or, presentations or podcasts like you're doing, Maurice. I mean, those kind of things. And then deciding, like, look, what can I implement that is going to move my life in that direction? And here's a big one. What risks am I willing to take to put myself in a position where I'm scared to death to do it, but you know what? I'm going to burn some bridges or burn the boats. You know what I mean? I'm going to burn the boats and I'm going to make this thing work. And so those are that's all the fertile soil, right? Like that's all the stuff that I need to plant myself in and cover myself with, and so that I grow. Because if I'm not growing in a direction, then I'm shrinking in a direction. And I think that's crucial for people to understand, that you got to consciously and intentionally move yourself forward.
But Daryl, I'm uncomfortable. If you ask me, maybe think outside the box. Maybe you're asking me, whoever is handling me, I'm coming from the plant idea, because we just did this not too long ago, where my wife had to go and replant certain things, right? And sometimes we don't, because it's a different type of soil, different type of nutrients, because it's fresh out the bag, whatever it is, I'm not used to it. Maybe I need some stress coat, whatever it is, but I'm outside of the box. So how do I grow when I'm no longer comfortable? A lot of times we don't like doing that.
Oh, but you gotta. That's the only place. That's the only place that growth happens, is outside the comfort, right? Mm-hmm. If my comfort's right here and I'm outside of it, there's a very good chance that I'm doing things that build my confidence. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could do the same thing every single day. The same thing every single day that's inside my box, which, and my dad is a perfect example. And he was a mechanic at General Motors. I was born in Detroit. He was a mechanic at General Motors. And that was his thing. I mean, and he did it for 40 years, and he took care of us to the best of his ability throughout his entire life. He worked overtime. He did everything to put food on the table. And so I thank him for that. But he woke up and did the same thing every day, and he did a really good job. For some reason, I came out kicking and screaming. I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing that. He said to me one time, and I respect everybody, any job, anything that somebody does as an occupation. So, whatever anybody does, I respect. And doing it to the best of their ability is a wonderful way to do it. It's the only way to do it. But I wanted to do something different. And I didn't know what it was. My dad said, you know what? I can get you a job on the assembly line. You want to do that? And I'm like, no, I really don't. I really don't. And it would have been really good money.
Right.
But I went in a different direction, and I decided I wanted to do something different. So outside the box, taking risks is absolutely crucial. Being uncomfortable is crucial, because you have to build your confidence, and then you get to a higher level of discomfort, and then another level of discomfort. But then at some point you start to love it. Mm-hmm. You start to love it. And it starts feeling good, even though it's like, man, I'm still scared to death. Anyway.
Well, and it's funny that we're in this place, because it refers to the name of this podcast, That Will Never Work. It's called That Will Never Work because I have close people to me that said, Maurice, you're going to do this podcast thing. You're going to do this business thing. It's something that's outside of the box, and it's never going to work. And so when your dad saw you kicking and screaming and try to put you in this position, how were you able to deal with someone that might have been close to you, someone that to some degree you're like, hey, you know what, I admire, you showed us consistency, you showed us what hard work looked like, but you may not be agreeing with the way I'm going in my life. How were you able to deal with that? Because it might have come from someplace that you really admired.
Yeah, that's a great question. And by the way, I love the name of your podcast.
Thank you.
And I thought about that a couple times this morning. That'll never work. I love it. That was not necessarily an easy thing for me to say no. But, and this is crucial for people to understand, it doesn't have to feel good to be right. It doesn't have to feel good or comfortable or whatever, but there's something inside of me that knew it was right to not go down that road. And so So at some point, if I'm listening to myself, and I think a really important part of being an entrepreneur is learning to listen to what's going on in here as opposed to all the noise. And I don't, there's noise in the head, there's noise outside of the head, but listening from here is crucial. And I think that I had to go in a direction, and now it just, everything speaks to me in here. And that's, continuing to grow and continuing to morph in that direction. People want stuff immediately, but it takes time, and it takes time to listen, and it takes time to know what to do. But once you know what to do, decisions are easy.
So one, Daryl, I need to say thank you very much for coming on the show. And for those individuals that want to make a decision, like, you know what, Daryl, I need to talk to you, man. So where can they find your information and talk to you and get your books and all that other stuff, even your bio?
Thank you, Maurice. So the best way to find me is on my website, which is daryldittmer.com, DarylDittmer.com. That has information about me, about my books, about my coaching. I'm doing sales training. That's not on the website yet, but it's something that I'm, helping teach people to do. And I teach from the perspective of I'm not going to teach you to make 100 calls a day. I'm going to teach you how to build yourself so that you make as many calls as you need to be successful. And so those are the kinds of things I do. I just want to build the human being and build the person from the inside out. And if you'd like to just shoot me an email, get in touch with me, it's Daryl, Daryl @daryldittmer.com.
Nice. Of course, y'all, the information will be in the show notes. So I don't care what you're doing, riding a bike, canoeing, whatever it might be, it'll be right there whenever you get back. So again, Daryl, I thank you very much for coming on the show. But I really would like to ask you this one last question, the would you rather question. Hopefully you prepare for it. Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
At this point in my life, I would rather choose 3 doors.
Okay. And any particular reason why?
Because I love the unexpected. There was a time in my life when I was so miserable and so bummed and just so directionless that I thought, you know what? I just don't know what's going to happen next, but I know it's going to be terrible. That was kind of what my attitude was. And for many, many years now, my attitude is, man, I cannot wait to see what's going to happen next. So fling one of those doors open. I will deal with whatever happens. And that's how I feel. That's how I feel about life. Just fling the doors open. Let's see what happens.
I'm chuckling because, some people don't like surprises. And there's been a lot of people who did not choose the doors because they didn't like the surprise. There were some people who said when the doors, there were glass, so they were able to see the evils behind it.
That's no fair.
Yeah, I know, right? But see, I respect your position. Hey, you know what? Whatever happens, I'm still going to learn from it, no matter what the situation is. But that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. But Daryl, I thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Maurice. I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you.
You're welcome. And of course, everyone, thank you very much for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. But I got to leave you with a challenge. This week, I want you to sit down with Daryl's ideas, his 2 rules for a successful life. Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too easy on yourself. Pick the one you are currently violating the most, the one you default to when things are difficult. If you've been crushing yourself with impossible standards, make one act of genuine self-compassion this week. If you've been letting yourself off the hook and drifting, make one act of honest self-accountability. Just one. The balance between those 2 moves is the road Daryl is describing that we talked about all day today, and I want you to walk in it for the next 7 days. I thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you just a little bit later.
Thanks for listening. Follow Maurice Chisholm on social media to stay connected, and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work. Or will it?